The night before my son's wedding. His fiancée leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume and whispered, "After tomorrow, you are not part of this family anymore." I stood there holding a scrapbook I had spent 3 weeks making for my son, and for one terrible second, I forgot how to breathe. I had come to the rehearsal dinner with that scrapbook pressed against my chest like a gift and a prayer. It was filled with every version of my boy I had carried through life alone. His first school photo with that crooked cowlick he hated, the gap-toothed grin after he lost his front tooth on a playground slide, the newspaper clipping from the mock trial championship he won in high school, a picture of him at 8 years old, asleep on the couch with a law book open on his stomach because he used to copy everything he saw grown men do on television and believed serious people always fell asleep reading. I wanted his future wife to see that she was not just marrying a handsome young attorney with a bright career ahead of him. She was marrying 27 years of sacrifice, prayer, skipped meals, extra shifts, hand-me-down shoes, late-night fevers, and quiet promises I made to a fatherless little boy who deserved better than what life gave him. Instead, I got Evelyn. Perfect hair, perfect white manicure, perfect smile for other people, and ice in her eyes when nobody was looking. She met me at the side entrance of the restaurant before I could even make it inside. The string lights over the patio cast a warm glow over her ivory dress, but there was nothing warm in her face. "I made this for Nathan," I said, holding out the scrapbook with both hands. "I thought maybe the two of you could look through it tonight." She did not even glance down. She just stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said, "After tomorrow, you are not part of this family anymore." For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her. "I'm sorry?" I asked. Her lips curved. Not a smile. Something smaller. Meaner. "You heard me, Mrs. Carter. You raised him. Thank you for that. But tomorrow he becomes my husband, and this becomes my family. You do not get to keep hovering around us forever. So do yourself a favor and do not make the wedding awkward by acting like you still belong at the center of his life." My fingers tightened around the scrapbook so hard the corners bent. I wish I could tell you I answered with something sharp and unforgettable. Something worthy of every cruel little comment I had swallowed over the years. I did not. I just stood there with my throat burning and my heart dropping so hard it felt physical. She tilted her head, studying me the way people look at a stain they expected to wipe away more easily. "Honestly," she said softly, "I have tolerated you for Nathan's sake. But women like you never know when to let go. Tomorrow is about us, not you. So stay home, sleep in, save yourself the embarrassment." Then she touched my arm. That was the part I hated most. The fake gentleness, like she was comforting me after shoving me off a cliff. I do not remember walking back to my car. I do remember sitting in my driveway 20 minutes later with the scrapbook in my lap and both hands shaking so badly I could not get the key out of the ignition. My name is Rose Carter. I am 54 years old. I raised my son alone after his father left us for a woman with shiny teeth and expensive shoes when Nathan was 7. I worked in a hospital cafeteria for 19 years. Then moved into patient intake when my knees started giving me trouble. I missed vacations I could not afford. I turned down promotions that would have forced me onto night shifts because Nathan needed me home. I learned how to stretch a pot of soup across 3 days. I learned how to hide fear behind humor when the electricity bill looked too big and the rent looked late. And I did all of it gladly, because my son was worth every hard year. Nathan had been my one clean miracle in a life that did not hand out many. He was the kind of child who apologized when other people bumped into him. The kind who noticed when I came home tired and quietly emptied the dishwasher without being asked. He studied like his future depended on it because it did. He once told me, when he was 16 and full of impossible sincerity, "Mom, one day I am going to become the kind of lawyer that protects people who get pushed around." I held on to that sentence through more bad days than he will ever know. So when he brought Evelyn home 3 years ago, I wanted to love her. I really did. She was polished and charming and beautiful in a way that made rooms rearrange themselves around her. Nathan was gone over her from the beginning. I saw it in the way he leaned toward her when she talked, the way he laughed faster, smiled softer, forgave too quickly. He looked happy. That mattered to me. But there were signs. Always signs. She was polite to me in front of him, and dismissive the moment he looked away. She never asked about Nathan's childhood, only his career plans. When he talked about public interest law, she smiled like he had made a childish joke. She introduced him to people as my future husband, the attorney, with a little prideful lift in her voice, as if he were an acquisition. Last year, I baked Nathan his favorite chocolate cake for his birthday. Same recipe since he was 10. Fudge layers, peanut butter frosting, He used to lick the beaters when he was little, and grin like he had discovered religion. Evelyn looked at the cake and said, "That is adorable. But Nathan is trying to be more disciplined now." Then she shouty moved it off the table before he could even cut it. He laughed awkwardly and kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks, Mom. You did not have to do that." But he saw my face. I know he did. He just did what good sons in love often do. He chose the path of least conflict and called it maturity. By the time the engagement came, I had already been edged out of every meaningful moment. No dress shopping, no tasting appointments, no invitation to help with anything. Every time I offered, Evelyn smiled tightly and said, "We have it covered." I told myself not to be dramatic. I told myself modern weddings were different. I told myself love required grace. But standing in my bedroom that night with the scrapbook open on my lap and Evelyn's words still ringing in my skull, I finally admitted something ugly. This woman did not just want my son. She wanted him detached, untethered, easy to control. I sat on the edge of my bed until the house went dark around me. At some point, the tears stopped and something colder settled in their place. Not really. Something quieter, something that said, "If I am not family after tomorrow, then tomorrow I will not be there at all." The next morning, I woke before sunrise out of habit. For a few seconds, I forgot. I put water in the stun for coffee. I ironed the pale blue dress I had bought months ago because Nathan once told me that color made me look happy. I laid out my shoes. I even reached for those pearl earrings my mother left me. Then the memory came back in one clean blade. "After tomorrow, you are not part of this family anymore." I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the steam rising from my mug until it disappeared. Then I put the dress away. I slid the scrapbook under my bed, and for the first time in 27 years, I chose myself over being the woman who absorbed everything and still showed up smiling. By 8:30, the first text came from Nathan. "Morning, Mom. Big day. Cannot wait to see you." At 9 o'clock, another. "Where are you? Aunt Linda says she has not heard from you." At 9:20, a voicemail. "Mom, call me back. Evelyn said you felt overwhelmed last night, but I know something is off. Please just call me." I pressed the phone to my chest and closed my eyes. Every instinct in me screamed to get in the car. But humiliation has a way of exhausting even the strongest love. At 10:05, my older sister June pounded on my front door in full bridesmaid makeup and enough anger to power the whole block. When I opened it, she stormed inside, looked at my jeans, my bare face, and the untouched dress box on the sofa, and said, "Rose, what in God's name are you doing?" "I am not going," I said. She stopped dead. "Tell me it's devils." "You cannot be serious." I told her everything, every word Evelyn had said the night before. The scrapbook, the whisper, the smirk, the order to stay home. By the time I finished, June was sitting at my kitchen table with both hands pressed over her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I know." She stared at me for a long time. "Nathan needs to know." I shook my head. "On his wedding day?" "Yes, on his wedding day. Would you his wedding day?" "No." If he marries her after hearing that, it will be because he made that choice with clear eyes. But I will not be the woman who drags my son into a war in the parking lot before he walks down the aisle. June looked like she wanted to argue. Then she looked at my face and changed her mind. At 10:45, I stood behind my living room curtain and watched neighbors in church clothes get into their cars. At 11 o'clock, the church bells started ringing, and I sat down on my couch, alone, while my only child prepared to marry the woman who had erased me with one sentence. I thought that was the end of the story. I was wrong. By noon, the wedding had collapsed, and the reason was only beginning to spread. Chapter 2. When June called, her voice was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Rose," she said, "sit down." "I am already sitting." "The wedding is off." For a moment, the room went completely still. "What do you mean, off?" "I mean there is no wedding." "There is chaos at the church. People are leaving. Nathan called it off. And Rose." She drew in a breath. "Evelyn got exposed." I gripped the arm of the couch. "Exposed how?" "That part is worse." What followed came to me in fragments at first. June from the church, my nephew from the parking lot. Two cousins who had apparently forgotten that whispering over speakerphones still counted as noise. By the end of the day, the pieces fit together into a story so ugly it would have sounded fake if it had not happened to my son. At 10:30, 30 minutes before the ceremony, Nathan was in a side room near the sanctuary with his best man, Caleb, and two college friends. He was nervous, pacing, straightening the cufflinks I gave him for law school graduation. The same cufflinks he used to joke made him feel like he should own a yacht. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. A message request from someone he did not know. Inside were 7 photographs. Evelyn. Not at work, not at brunch, not hugging a distant cousin some jealous person might try to spin into scandal. Evelyn was wrapped around another man in a hotel lobby, in a restaurant booth, in the back seat of a car, and outside an apartment building Caleb later recognized as belonging to her boss. The photos were dated 2 weeks earlier. Nathan thought they were fake at first. That is what people in love do when truth arrives too fast. They bargain with it, and they look for editing, angles, revenge, misunderstanding. Then Caleb zoomed in on one photo, and there it was. The bracelet Nathan bought Evelyn on her birthday. The one she claimed she hardly ever wore because it was too delicate. A neighbor of Evelyn's had sent the photos anonymously. Apparently the affair had not been discreet. Apparently secrets get sloppy when people think a wedding ring is already guaranteed. Nathan went white. Then, as if that was not enough, another piece fell into place almost immediately. One of Evelyn's bridesmaids, already nervous and half drunk on champagne, made the mistake of crying in front of the wrong person. My sister June has a gift for looking harmless right before someone tells her more than they should, and that morning was no exception. The bridesmaid, mascara trembling, told June that Evelyn had never intended to stop seeing her boss. Not really. She planned to settle down properly after the wedding once Nathan started making serious money. Until then, she had options. Options. That word alone made my stomach turn. But there was more. Evelyn's family had money problems. Real ones. The kind polished clothes can only hide for so long. Her father, Richard Holloway, had a trail of failed business ventures, defaulted loans, and one almost bankruptcy that was only avoided by selling property his mother had left him. Her mother floated through charity events in silk and denial, while collectors called during dinner. Nathan was not just a groom to them. He was an exit strategy. The prenuptial agreement Evelyn insisted on was supposedly there to protect both families. Nathan had skimmed it, embarrassed by money talk and eager to seem trusting. He assumed lawyers would handle the rest. He never read it closely. That morning, Caleb did. And Caleb, unlike my son, had never trusted Evelyn's smile. Tucked into the agreement were clauses so lopsided they read less like a marriage contract and more like a long con in formal language. If the marriage lasted fewer than 5 years, certain shared lifestyle reimbursements would entitle Evelyn to a percentage of Nathan's future earnings. If relocation for her career support was required, he would absorb the costs. If they purchased joint property, her initial contribution could be symbolic. While ownership percentages remained heavily protected in her favor, it was a trap. Elegant, legal-looking, predatory. By the time Nathan stormed toward the bridal suite, the church was already humming with the kind of tension people pretend not to notice while actively feeding on it. June told me later that when he opened the door, Evelyn was standing in front of a mirror in her gown, radiant and composed, as if she had never betrayed anyone in her life. She smiled when she saw him. Then she saw his face. "What is this?" he asked, holding out the phone. She looked at the first photo and every bit of blood left her face. "That is not what it looks like." I have come to hate that sentence. Nothing honest ever starts with it. Nathan's voice broke on the next words. 2 weeks ago, Evelyn? 2 weeks before our wedding. Her bridesmaids froze. Then, because liars usually double down before they collapse, Evelyn reached for indignation. "You are invading my privacy." He laughed once, sharp and wounded. "Your privacy?" That is when she made the mistake that finally opened his eyes all the way. Instead of apologizing, she attacked. "This is exactly why your mother has always been a problem," she snapped. "She has been poisoning people against me from the start." My son went very still, and in that stillness, I think the whole pattern rearranged itself for him. The way she spoke to me when he was not looking, the birthday cake, the wedding planning exclusion, the constant pressure to prioritize image over people, the text I never answered, the fact that I was not there. He asked her, in a voice June said she will never forget, "What did you say to my mother last night?" Evelyn hesitated. "That was all it took." "What did you say?" he repeated. She tried to recover. "Nathan, that is not the issue right now."
Oh, God, I know I'm slow.
"It is." And that was when somebody, maybe one of the bridesmaids, maybe God himself finally deciding enough was enough, admitted hearing part of it the night before. Enough for my son to understand that I had not simply skipped the biggest day of his life. I had been pushed out of it. At 11:12, Nathan walked into the sanctuary without a bride. The organ stopped. The guests turned. He stood at the front of the church, pale, shaking, but strangely steady in the eyes, and said, "There will be no wedding today." Gasps rippled through the pews. Evelyn's mother stood up first, demanding an explanation. Her father followed, red-faced and outraged. already acting as if public humiliation was something that had been done to them rather than built by them. Nathan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He simply said, "I found out the truth before the ceremony. Evelyn has not been honest with me. This wedding is canceled." Evelyn came running down the side aisle in full bridal silk, shouting his name, hissing about misunderstanding, begging him not to do this in front of everyone. But he had finally learned what I learned years ago. People who manage you in private are terrified of truth in public. The service dissolved into noise. Guests stood, whispered, checked their phones, pretended not to stare directly at the bride while staring directly at the bride. One child started crying in the back row. The pastor looked like he wanted the floor to open and take the whole congregation with it. By noon, people were already leaving the parking lot with the story half told and growing uglier with every retelling. I was still sitting in my living room when the first wave of texts arrived. "Wedding canceled. Are you okay? Call me now. Did you know?" I should have felt victorious. I did not. I felt sick for my son. Because betrayal is ugly enough on its own. Public betrayal leaves bruises you cannot point to. Nathan came to my house that evening still wearing his suit pants and an unbuttoned dress shirt, tie hanging loose, face wrecked. The moment I opened the door, he looked at me, really looked at me and said, "Why did you not tell me?" There was no accusation in it. That made it worse. I stepped aside and let him in. He sat at my kitchen table where he had done homework for years, where he once built a model courthouse out of cereal boxes for a 5th grade project, where he used to spread scholarship forms out in careful rows. I told him everything. The rehearsal dinner, the scrapbook, the whisper, the order to stay home. When I finished, he covered his face with both hands. "I called you," he said hoarsely. "I kept calling, and I thought maybe you were angry or overwhelmed, or I could not come watch you marry someone who wanted to cut me out of your life." He looked up then, eyes bright with pain and shame. "She said that to you because she thought I would choose her anyway." I did not answer. Sometimes silence is the kindest truth a mother can give. He stared at the table for a long time. Then he said, almost to himself, "I would have." That hurt him more than anything else that day, I think. Not the affair. Not the canceled wedding. The realization that love had made him weak, exactly where she needed him weak. I reached across the table and touched his hand. "You saw her in time, because Caleb got those photos." "Yes." He swallowed hard. "Not because I protected you." There it was. The real wound. I squeezed his hand. "You are not 7 anymore, Nathan. I do not need you to protect me from every mean woman who walks into our lives." He gave a broken little laugh. "But I should have noticed." "Yes," I said softly. "You should have." People like to pretend mothers always soften the truth. Good mothers do not. Not when truth is the only thing left that can save a person. He nodded once like a man accepting a sentence. That should have been enough pain for 1 week. It was not. By the next morning, Evelyn had already gone online. She posted a photograph of herself in her wedding dress, mascara streaked, bouquet on the floor, eyes lifted toward the camera like an angel betrayed by the whole wicked world. The caption read, "Some people do not know how to let go." Some mothers would rather destroy their sons than see them happy. Thousands of strangers, people who had never sat at my kitchen table, or watched me count grocery dollars, or heard my son cry after his father left, started weighing in with full confidence. Monster. Jealous mother. Emotional manipulation. Control freak. I stared at that post until my vision blurred. I had not gone to the wedding. I had not confronted her. I had not exposed her affair. And somehow I was still the villain. That is when I understood something Evelyn understood much earlier than I did. Perception is a weapon, and people like her do not surrender it quietly. 2 days later, a legal letter arrived. Then another. Her family was threatening claims for defamation, emotional distress, interference with contractual relations, reputational damages. It was nonsense dressed up in expensive language, but nonsense can still bankrupt ordinary people if it is loud enough and funded well enough. Nathan was fresh out of law school, buried under student debt, just beginning his career at a mid-sized firm downtown. A public mess like this could stain him before he even started. He came over that night with another letter in his hand, and fear behind his jaw. "They are threatening me too," he said. "What do they want?" "A statement." "About what?" He looked sick. That I overreacted. But that the wedding was canceled because of outside pressure. That you have always struggled with boundaries, and that emotions were high. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes cruelty becomes so shameless it circles back into absurdity. "They want me turned into the unstable mother," I said. "They want all of us turned into whatever protects them." Nathan sat heavily on the sofa. Mom, I do not know how far they will push this. I looked at my son, at the boy I had raised into a good man who made one terrible romantic mistake, and something inside me sharpened. I had stayed quiet for dignity. I had stayed quiet for peace. I had stayed quiet because mothers are trained to believe endurance is nobility. Enough! I stood up, went into my bedroom, reached under the bed, and pulled out the scrapbook. Nathan looked at it, confused. I was going to give this to you the night before the wedding, I said. Instead, Evelyn told me I was no longer part of this family. He took the scrapbook from my hands like it weighed something sacred. His thumb brushed the edge of the cover, and I knew then that I was done surviving this quietly. If Evelyn wanted a war of perception, she had picked the wrong woman to corner. Because unlike her, I had the truth. And unlike my son, I was no longer in love with her. Chapter 3. My friend Linda has worked in legal administration for 20 years and has exactly 2 moods. Deeply kind and professionally terrifying. When I showed her the letters from Evelyn's family, she skimmed them once, snorted, and said, "This is intimidation with a better font." Can they do any of it? They can file paper. Anyone can file paper. That does not mean they can win. She tapped one manicured nail against the table. But if they are threatening this hard, it means they are scared. Linda introduced me to a financial investigator named Marcus Bell, a former bank fraud analyst who spoke in short sentences and distrusted everyone on principle. I liked him immediately. Nathan provided everything he had. Screenshots, email chains, drafts of the prenuptial agreement, notes from meetings with Evelyn's father. Caleb shared the metadata from the affair photos and the name of the anonymous sender. June contributed what she heard from the bridesmaid. By the end of that week, we had enough threads to start pulling. And once we pulled, the whole Holloway family began to unravel. Richard Holloway, Evelyn's father, had cycled through 3 failed companies in 9 years. Consulting, property development, specialty imports. Each one collapsed under debt, unpaid obligations, and suspicious bookkeeping. Her mother, Celeste, sat on non-profit boards and wore borrowed diamonds to fundraising dinners while quietly refinancing the same property twice. Evelyn herself carried credit card balances that would have made me faint at her age, and had already co-signed one private business loan for her father under a structure that would drag any future spouse into the blast radius, if handled carelessly. Then came the prenup. Marcus read it twice, leaned back in his chair, and said, "This is not a marriage agreement. This is an extraction plan. Certain clauses would have allowed reimbursement pathways, joint lifestyle offsets, and future income-sharing structures that could, in practice, redirect a shocking percentage of Nathan's early career earnings, if the marriage lasted even briefly. It was all polished, layered, and crafted to sound fair to someone eager to trust." Nathan went gray when Marcus explained it. She said it was standard. Marcus gave him a look reserved for men learning expensive lessons. It was standard if the plan was to milk you slowly while smiling. That was the moment my son stopped grieving a bride and started seeing a predator. 2 weeks later, Richard Holloway invited Nathan to a private dinner to resolve misunderstandings. I knew a setup when I heard one. Nathan wanted to refuse. I told him to accept. "Why?" he asked. "Because desperate people talk too much when they think they still have a chance." The dinner was scheduled at the Sterling House downtown, the kind of hotel ballroom that smells faintly of money and old floral arrangements. Richard assumed the setting would restore control. Men like him always believe chandeliers make them look legitimate. Nathan agreed to attend. I decided I was coming too. He frowned when I told him. "Mom, they will target you." "They already did." "That is not what I mean." "I know," I said. "That is exactly why I am coming." I wore the pale blue dress I had bought for the wedding. Not for drama, for closure. When we walked into the ballroom, the Holloways were already seated. Richard at the head of the table, posture smooth and practiced. Celeste beside him in cream silk, looking tragically elegant. Evelyn in a black dress, face thinner now, beauty sharpened by anger instead of vanity. Richard stood and smiled like we were old friends meeting after a scheduling misunderstanding. "Nathan." "Mrs. Carter." "Thank you for coming." I sat without taking his hand. Nathan remained standing for a second longer, then took the chair beside me. Richard folded his hands. We all know emotions have been high. Weddings are stressful. Rumors spread. Mistakes get magnified. "Mistakes," I repeated. Evelyn flinched. He continued as if I had not spoken. "There has been damage on both sides. Public embarrassment, pain. But I believe mature people can still salvage dignity." Translation, they wanted control back. I set a folder on the table. Richard's eyes flicked to it. Flick to it. I opened it slowly. Before we discuss dignity, I said, let us discuss your daughter's affair. Celeste inhaled sharply. Evelyn's face hardened. I slid the printed photographs across the table, then the loan records, then the bankruptcy filings, then marked copies of the prenuptial agreement with highlighted clauses and annotations from Marcus. The silence that followed was better than any speech. Richard reached for the papers first. His face changed by degrees as he read. Not shocked. Angry. Cornered. This material was obtained improperly, he said at last.
No, I subdated.
It was obtained carefully. Celeste tried a different angle. Rose, surely we can settle this privately. I looked at her. Did your daughter speak to me privately the night before the wedding? Evelyn's eyes flashed. You are enjoying this. That surprised a laugh out of me. No. What I am enjoying is finally being done with your performance. Nathan spoke then, and his voice was steadier than I had heard it in weeks. You lied to me. You cheated on me. You let your family build a financial trap around my future. And after all that, you blamed my mother. Evelyn turned toward him with sudden softness. A mask she put on too late. Nathan, please. I made mistakes, yes, but I loved you. He shook his head slowly. No. You loved the life I could give you. Richard leaned forward. Young relationships are complicated. No one needs to destroy reputations over private failures. I met his eyes. You threatened my son with litigation because your daughter got caught cheating. That is not what this is about. Then why did your letters mention reputation and income more than heartbreak? That shut him up. I took one more document from the folder and placed it in front of Nathan. Read Clause 14 out loud. He looked at me, then down at the page, then swallowed. In the event of dissolution within the first 5 years, 75% of certain earnings allocated under shared lifestyle maintenance may be directed through designated joint financial structures. He looked up. That is me. Yes, I said. That is you, Celeste whispered. Richard. Evelyn finally snapped. This is disgusting, she hissed. You are all acting like I am some kind of criminal. Marcus, who had arrived 10 minutes earlier and was seated quietly near the back as agreed, spoke for the first time. Predatory does not always require handcuffs. Everyone turned. Richard looked outraged. Who is this? My investigator, I said. His face blanched. Your what? The man who helped us understand what you were trying to do to my son. You could feel the room tilt then. The Holloways came to that dinner, expecting emotion. They found evidence. Richard's voice rose. You cannot threaten us with made-up narratives. Marcus slid a business card across the table and said, I do not do narratives. Nathan stood, not shakily, not like the man who had been ambushed at his own church, like a man who finally knew where the floor was. This ends tonight, he said. There will be no reconciliation, no statement clearing your names, no private agreement. If you contact my mother again outside counsel, I will treat it as harassment. If you continue threatening us, I will respond formally. Evelyn stood too, eyes shining now, anger cracking into desperation. Nathan, do not do this. He looked at her for a long time. I watched something in him finish breaking. Then he said the sentence I did not know I needed until I heard it. You told my mother she was not part of my family anymore. You were wrong. She is the reason I know what family even is. Evelyn's face collapsed, not into remorse, into defeat. We walked out before they could recover. In the parking lot, under the cold yellow lights, Nathan stopped beside my car and covered his face with both hands. For one frightened second, I thought he was going to fall apart. Then he laughed. It was rough and broken and full of disbelief. I almost married her. Yes, I said. He lowered his hands and looked at me. I am sorry. I stepped closer. For what? For every time I minimized something because it was easier. For every time I thought keeping peace was the same as being fair. For not seeing what she was doing to you. I touched his cheek the way I used to when he was small and feverish. You see it now. He nodded. That has to mean something. It means everything, I said. But the story still was not finished. Because Evelyn had one weapon left. Public sympathy. So I took that too. With Linda's help, and after Marcus made sure every claim we referenced was supported cleanly, a journalist at a regional investigative outlet received a packet. No melodrama. No exaggeration. Just records. Contract language. Business history. Timelines. Enough for someone smart to follow the money without us needing to scream. A week later, the article went live. Well, chino dasi. It did not mention every private cruelty. It did not need to. It laid out the Holloway financial history, the predatory structure of the prenup, the timing of the canceled wedding, and the contradictions in Evelyn's public victim narrative. It hinted at the affair without leaning on it. The real scandal was not romance. It was strategy. The comments turned overnight. So she wanted his paycheck. That poor mother. I knew something was off when the mother was missing from the wedding. Predatory family. Scary. Nathan's law firm, which had quietly been monitoring the situation, suddenly became much warmer. Funny how professional confidence returns when public doubt moves elsewhere. The legal threats stopped. Completely. No more letters. No more calls. No more indirect messages from mutual acquaintances urging peace for the sake of appearances. Silence. The kind I should have had from them from the beginning. Nathan threw himself into work. Not to hide. To rebuild. There is a difference, and I could see it in him. He stopped carrying his shame like a second spine. He laughed more. He slept. He started cooking again, badly, but with enthusiasm. One Sunday he came over and made grilled cheese in my kitchen like he was 12, and proud of not burning the bread. Later that evening, we sat on the porch with the sweet tea and watched the sky go gold over the maple trees. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Mom? Yes? I kept thinking that wedding falling apart was the worst day of my life. I waited. He looked down at our hands. But maybe it was the day my life got handed back to me. That one day almost made me cry. Almost. Instead, I smiled and said, "That is a very lawyer way to describe surviving a disaster." He laughed. Then he said quietly, "I read the scrapbook." I turned toward him. "You did?" He nodded. "Twice." "Nice." "And?" His eyes glistened. "I do not think I ever understood how much you gave up." "That is the job, sweetheart." "No," he said softly. "Loving me was the job. The rest of it was sacrifice. Sometimes your children do not truly see you until life breaks the wrong illusion. I wish he had seen sooner. I am still grateful he saw it all. Now tell me honestly, if a woman looked you in the eye and told you that after your own child's wedding you would no longer be family, would you have stayed quiet like I did at first? Or would you have burned her perfect day down before she ever reached the aisle?"